We are. Good
Good
evening,
evening. Good
people
evening.
in Asia. Good morning to people in US, and good afternoon for people from Europe. So we have people from all over the world at this point in time. And this is Prasad Kapre, a part of the Indian gems and jewelry industry for the last 27 years. And I'm here with the czar of fashion, which is Tarun Tehliani. And at this point in time, we have where we blend the fashion jewelry and the fine jewelry. It's been almost 5,000 years, actually. The apparel industry and the jewelry industry started almost together, almost 5,000 years ago. But what we have seen is over the years, and especially in the last 30 years, fashion industry has grown by leaps and bounds and has taken a completely glamorous route, versus the fine jewelry is still where it is. It's going. It's like hair and tortoise. It's still moving. But I hope someday tortoise moves faster than the hair, and the jewelry industry, also at least, it runs with the same pace. So we have Tarun here with me, and who has been in the industry since 1995. And a quick background to his studio, which was founded in 1995. He's known for a juxtaposition of modern tailoring and Indian craft that gives an edge to the modern consumer. It is essentially the exuberant and richly detailed structured drape that represents Tarun Tehliani's modern Indian woman. The Tarun Tehliani Design Studio creates couture, occasion wear, and ready to wear, which is a fusion of Indian craftsmanship and fine textiles with contemporary international chic. His unique combination of historical opulence and contemporary style also lend themselves to a couture. The garments produced are sold in New York, London, Tokyo, Hong Kong, Dubai, and in his own stores in New Delhi, Mumbai, Hyderabad, India. Tarun Tehliani is probably India's most established designer in terms of infrastructure and distribution. Tarun Tehliani has a degree in management from the Wharton School of Business and associate degree from the Fashion Institute of Technology, New York. So once again, welcome, Tarun.
Thank you so much,
Okay.
Prasad. I just want to say to you a little story at the beginning that, remember, the tortoise won the race. The hare got a little complacent. So don't feel so sorry for yourself. The tortoise won it. That's the important thing.
Yes,
Anyway.
absolutely. And that's what I'm looking forward to, because I'm extremely passionate about our jewelry industry. So that's where we are. So to start off with, Tarun, just give me a little background about your brand or your label, Tarun Tehliani.
Well, okay, very briefly, I actually started a store in 1987, India's sort of first big multi-brand design store to promote Indian design, because we saw that there was a dearth of beautiful things here. We could find a lot of these beautiful Indian things abroad, but they weren't sold in India, and we thought it was odd that, India was now sort of spreading her wings and coming into her own, and was shaking off the shackles of socialism. And there was no great, beautiful store that represented Indian design, both because there were great Indian designers beginning to do wonderful work.
Right.
And also, as you all might know, the entire beading in the Western world, or for the most part, whether the American, the Italian, the French designers, the English, is done in India, because embroidery is one of, just like fine jewelry, embroidery is one of our greatest and oldest skills, because we were a textile industry in fashion, and we embellished the textile. And things that would be incomprehensible in the Western world were never too much for Indians to do. I mean, I've got chiffon saris done that will take 4 people 1 year to do in Kashmir, and they'll do it in a single thread. So though it's still chiffon, it falls like a jameva shawl. That's where we come from. And I think, at this point in time in the late 80s, India was sort of exploding, and the younger generation, the youth, wanted something more than the sari. It was a new fashion moment, and we were sort of here at the right time. And picked up on this whole energy. And so we started a store that actually catapulted or was a catalyst for Indian fashion to suddenly get noticed. It was not a serious player. It was very niche, but it was catching eyeballs, as somebody should when something new starts, a new movement. And so by and by, I decided that in a few years, I wanted to actually really design and not be a retailer. So I went back to study at FIT. That's when I got the new associate degree. Because you see, in India, our masters, our cutters, didn't really understand cutting because most of our beautiful textiles were handlooms that were woven to be draped on the body. So as you know, whether a woman wears a sari or someone wears a lungi or a turban or a safa or a shawl, it's big pieces of fabric that Indians know how to wrap and wrap in different ways. And the same piece of textile as a sari is worn very differently in Maharashtra than it's worn in Bengal or South India. We have different dialects and different food, we even have different ways of wrapping textiles that are identifiable in the way they work. And then sometimes they vary by length. And of course, the textile itself will vary because different communities weave different things or embellish. And this embellishment was exquisite, what we did on it. And actually, embroidery was more Islamic things. So I think with the advent of the slave dynasties and the Mughals coming in, they brought in a certain embroidery that now has just got permeated down into every pore of India. And now designers, it's not a Hindu or a Muslim thing. It's contemporary Indian fashion or traditional fashion that uses this with great joy and, elan. And a lot of the embroideries are very jewel-like because I don't think there's any country in the world that likes rich textiles and jewelry as much as we Indians do. I don't see it in the West. I don't see it in the Chinese culture. It might have been there for a short while under Marie Antoinette, but that didn't end very well. And so it's really now such a huge part of our culture. And so that's what we've been working with, But I'm not only interested in looking at costumes of Royal India and how to recreate that, because I don't think that's our life anymore. Much as Indians might dress up like that at weddings. I'm interested in what's modern. So to combine, which you said, Western construction and tailoring with Indian workmanship and textiles, much as though in the same way jewelers will do your fine settings in platinum, etc., of diamonds, that might not have been an Indian way that you've learned or brought in. Our look was more the beaten gold, the jarrah, the uncut diamonds, the enamel, very beautiful, but a different technique, not with the same precision, perhaps of stone cutting, it was a different aesthetic. And that's something that's been brought in, and now you can create anything you want in India. Likewise, I think that's a good analogy to give how clothes have been changed, and we are trying to blend Western construction with our Indian workmanship. I'd say that's what our brand is about.
So, actually, coming to the fashion industry, and since I'm just trying to correlate it with the fine jewelry as well, the fact is that both these industries started almost 5,000 years ago, actually. But nonetheless, what is it that over the last 30 years that things have suddenly taken and what is it that actually fashion industry did to generate this sort of a glamour and growth?
It's honestly, Prasad, it's not what the Indian fashion industry did. It's a global phenomena. When the world went from in India wearing saris or going to the tailor to getting clothes made, okay, because then it was small. Let's say this might have happened even in Europe before the Second World War, to then the advent of the department store, mass market, mass fashion, popular trends, the rise of magazines, then television, the fashion show as a phenomena, which must have started. It was very small in the 40s and 50s for the super wealthy ladies who bought the couture in Paris. But then the ready-to-wear show became, you go to a Chanel ready-to-wear show, there are 3,000 people and, 700 cameras, and they're beaming it across the world. And it's that energy, and, it's not just clothes, it's models, it's beauty, it's energy, it's sex appeal. As I've described to you, we've had this discussion with jewelry. How do you show it like that?
Yeah.
So it just became a visual medium in popular culture. 50 years back, you might have had Maria Callas singing in an opera house. But you can't compete with Madonna singing in a stadium, and it goes global. So think of this analogy in the same way, that this was about popular culture. It wasn't about fine jewelry. It's not the fine couture. In fact, couture which is the equivalent of your fine jewelry, is dying and shrinking. It's almost dead. It's popular culture that came up. It could be ripped jeans, it could be jackets with thing, what Dolce Gabbana does with, from the sophistication of Armani to, fine embroideries of Rohit Bal, whatever it is. And it was an easily produced, it was mass produced, it was distributed, it was accessible because prices came down. And it's how when there was all this economic growth, that people, one of the things they used to define themselves, how fashionable they were, how they projected themselves. We now have a problem globally because they're producing 10 billion pieces of clothing, 100 billion, and 70 billion are being tossed every year into landfills or into the ocean, and we can't sustain that. So I think we might be at the end of one cycle, and things will go back to finesse and fine, but also in our urban centers, in India.
Right.
Let's say, unless you're very wealthy, what's the relevance of fine jewelry except at weddings? People can't wear it. Fashions change. People are looking to experience. So, things go up and down. I still think there's a fantastic, huge market globally and in India who really finds luxurious, beautiful jewelry, like collectible, perhaps an investment. It has value forever. Once you bought something, there's no value to the clothes. So there are different things. I think we've just seen a different phenomena, let's say, from the 60s of, this world where there was relative stability, there was very much prosperity. People came into the middle and upper middle classes in numbers that were never seen before, and therefore clothing flourished.
Tarun, actually, this should have been seen even in the jewelry industry. I think the only big difference is, as you mentioned, that on the ramp you can hardly see the jewelry, but nonetheless, when you are trying to have your new clothing and new apparels, obviously you need a matching jewelry, and if we put together on the ramp.
But you see big fashion houses like Chanel will put accessories on that they sell, or they'll put the shoes, they'll put the dark glasses. But the item that really caught on and is shocking how much they sell for is the it bag. So I think there are brands like Louis Vuitton and more recently Tod's with their shoes, or Loewe in Spain, that started doing fashion shows to show the new collection of bag, because who is interested in a bag on its own, I mean, a bag, you can tweak it, it's a little different. But when it comes pumping down that runway I remember one Louis Vuitton show, they did denim and the big afro. The next thing, they were all getting out, this was in Marc Jacobs with this beautiful carousel. And they looked like little angels with clear, bags. They were some kind of plastic with a little bit of something, selling for thousands of dollars. I mean, you think about it. But they were able to create a very powerful visual that went global, and everybody wanted that. They were bigger. They were objects of desire. Today, there are a lot of fakes even in the bag and clothing industry, but there's so much good costume, people can't tell the difference. And fine jewelry has also become very, very expensive. And in day-to-day life, jewelry is not such an important part of everyday life for a lot of people, unless they're very wealthy or have very, rarefied lifestyles.
Right.
So it's again, that's different.
Okay. Now, just for the attention of all the attendees, that in case you have any questions, you may post it on the Q&A, and we'll take it up maybe after some time. Okay, coming back to the fashion industry, and one of the very interesting things which fashion has been doing, of course, jewelry has just caught on, and they are also doing the trend forecasting. But this has been happening with the fashion industry for quite some time. And generally, I have seen that fashion works at least almost a year in advance. So you would be working for your summer collection for 2021, which is not really seen so much in the jewelry industry. So that is something, how do you think jewelry can learn from here, and what kind of forecasting and what kind of measures we need to take?
Well, let me say this, that I don't think jewelry design changes as often as fashion design. Because by just changing the fabric, the same thing looks totally different, right? Whereas if you just change, sometimes there are many beautiful classical designs. I couldn't remember the name that day, but very often I'll see at a jeweler, somebody sitting with the Cartier book or the Graf book, and they'll say, well, we're wearing a Graf design. It doesn't matter to them, it's not made by Graf, but they've got someone who does a site holder to provide beautiful diamonds, and they'll set a design just like something, and it's considered fine. But If you go back, what's you going to do that makes it look different? Whereas in fashion, I can use the same pattern every season. It looks different. It can be patchwork one year, it could be print, it could be anything. So the turnaround and turnover is much easier. Secondly, people mix and match things which look totally different in fashion. Normally with jewelry, you can't mix and match earrings, or you'd wear a set, or you. And anyway, like I said, costume jewelry became a big thing. So you had designers like Mariam Haskell, and you did in India Amrapali, and you had the silver and the tribal. These all became very acceptable. Chanel does pearls because Madame Chanel wore pearls. She had the very famous Duke of Westminster bought her pearls. But today they do pearls. They're Swarovski pearls. They sell for $1,500 a string. You can buy a real pair of pearls, but it's the branding. It's the style in which they've shown it. And yet a brand like Chanel will also have a fine bijou division that does very special pieces for its top clients, or, for the super wealthy. I don't think that's the issue. People who are buying really beautiful jewelry will buy it to wear it, to collect it as pieces of art because they adore it. But lifestyle has moved, and people are constantly on the go, and it's different. So that's why big diamonds will work. People will put them on. But today I even find with Indians, when there's so many weddings abroad, no one wants to carry that big jewelry. They're worried about customs. They're worried about it getting stolen. A great friend of mine was staying at a top hotel in in Rome. And even though she left this giant Golconda necklace in the hotel safe, it was stolen. There's nothing she could do about it. So people are nervous. So, they'll buy things, they'll buy them to invest. They will buy things that are special always.
Sure.
But everyone buys clothes. Everyone, it's easy. You can make it. It's just an easier thing. And it's not to say that jewelry has any less of value. And also, families who have jewelry, with clothes, you keep getting rid of them. Everyone who's bought the jewelry has it. So the wealthy families have so much jewelry. There are plenty to choose from.
But while designing, actually, you need to bring in the efficiencies of the production and the entire logistics and the systems involved. So do you think the technology plays a vital role in this?
Well, sorry to even go back to your earlier question, which I don't think I answered. Because department stores work a year in advance, and they're trying to coordinate, at least till recently, till online became so powerful. And now with this COVID issue, online is even more powerful because everybody's online. But let's say till 10, 15 years back, when people still liked the experience of going to a beautiful store and it was more tactile, people had more time, they weren't stuck on their mobiles, they didn't travel so much maybe. It's called retail therapy. But stores had to work in advance. So if they were buying clothes in green from a designer, then they ordered green shoes, they ordered green bags. Their buyers were putting a look together from before, so that when people came in, they gave them cohesive options, whatever their point of view was. And for that, you had to work in advance if you were showing in the fashion system. So, which now, again, after all of this is under question that I hear when I see the business of fashion and all the reviews and all the discussions. But let's say the shows that happen in February, March are so buyers can place orders and they can ship it to the stores in time for the fall. So you showed 4 or 5 months in advance to be able to produce it. And therefore, you had to be working 4 or 5 months in advance of that to get your samples ready and to shoot it and get the costings and do whatever else the fashion houses do. So it became that. Now there's a big talk of going back to fashion that's in the stores close to the season you want to wear it, because it's creating fatigue. And people are seeing so much information on their phones and on their, all the electronic stuff that it's becoming exhausting to try and keep track of it. I think that technology plays a part. Technology allows you to become faster. So a company like Zara, that I'm told is valued as the wealthiest company in the world, or one of the wealthiest, has made a fantastic business model of basically working with fewer fabrics, and they watch the shows and they'll knock it off and turn it around and get it to the stores before the designer who showed and did that work did. So they're right on trend. So what shows say in Paris in early March, Zara can have it for you in the stores if they want to by April. And they've mastered that, which nobody else could do. The designers couldn't do it. So technology, new ideas, a new way to feed the hunger for newness that somebody like him might have done. Also affordable fashion. Now there's a new trend. It's called Athleisure Wear. It's what everybody's sitting around at home during this COVID. The track pants that are stretch, it's Lululemon and all. And they're saying for the first time, athleisure is going to outsell normal sportswear.
Right.
And that means now it's perfectly fine. When we were children, if you said you want to go to a restaurant in jeans, people would stare at you like, are you crazy? Now if you go to a restaurant, someone might be in shorts, you get on a plane, people are wearing rubber choppers, they look like they've got out of bed. So as the world changes, things that become acceptable change the way people dress. And when they dress up, then they really dress up. So I think that, as lifestyle change, fashion changes, there are new things that come to the market. In jewelry, I don't see that change. Jewelry is about fine jewelry is about beautiful stones first. Then it's about great design. It's about incredible workmanship and a great skill. It's not something, although now I've seen factories where they're doing laser castings and things are being mass produced and fast, but it doesn't have the finesse of something beautiful and handmade and that special thing that you feel. And that's not to be mass marketed,
Sure.
So I see when I see I was once in, the big trade fair in Switzerland, and, the big names had these wonderful stalls at Basel, and they had exquisite pieces of jewelry. Those are for collectors, maybe for the top industrialists, It's a different world. It is not a mass world. And at the same token, I find Cartier and, the little Van Cleef, Clover, a lot of them making identifiable symbols that they now sell in much greater numbers. So maybe that's the game. The really fine jewelry stays the couture. And then those jewelers who have an identifiable style would then do simpler things and easier pieces that you can just throw on your t-shirt and jeans. And that's the way I think people are saying. So with a lot of jewelers, they did it with watches. Okay, they went into watches because a watch is easy to do. So you can go from a stainless steel to a gold, whether it's Cartier, whatever, and you do a whole range. That's what you guys did. That's what the established jewelers did. They all have wonderful watch lines. So all I'm going to say is people find their own way. Tomorrow it might be bracelets. Since active wear and people are so health conscious and everyone wants to wear the iWatch, maybe the watch sales have slumped a bit because now people just want to wear that all the time. They don't care.
True.
Life changes and we have to find new solutions
In
for
fact,
customers and their life.
Yeah, that brings me to the question which people have been asking. It's there in the Q&A as well. That post-COVID, how do you think the entire luxury space is going to change, and how the consumer is likely to behave, or what are the?
I think it's going to be very good for the jewelry industry, because I think with clothes, firstly, at least till there's a cure or a vaccine, you're not going to have big gatherings. It won't even be allowed, and it will be irresponsible of people. So this big fat Indian wedding of 5,000, 2,000, 1,000 is all history for now.
Right.
There'll be much smaller events. I mean, small could be less than 50. And, I suppose people will have to wear masks, but they will wear finer things. They will wear not such flashy things. They will wear finer because you'll be able to see it up close. You will not, it's not like you'll go in and have to see a bride on a stage with, 2,000 people between you and her. And so it needs a different kind of, it can go back to much greater finesse. People will notice the quality of things because there's not this sensory overload. And everything will go back to that. So even the jewelry they will buy and wear will be finer. It'll be appreciated for its design and its make and the quality of the stones. Whereas if you're just wearing these big bibs of uncut diamonds, I mean, it hardly matters,
Right.
So I think that's what will happen. I think everyone under this reflection has thought long and hard about if they really want to help change the way this planet has been abused, that everyone's going to have to buy less and buy more special. So, and this idea of wash and wear and cast off and everything being disposable has to stop. You have to buy something you love and use it like it was in our parents' generation. They didn't have the luxury. It wasn't a mindset. What they wore, they used.
Right.
So you don't mind spending. I mean, I'm not talking about the super rich who can buy what they want when they want. I think that attitude, I think just acquisition to look different for the sake. I think if people have a stillness, they will have a better chance to express themselves cohesively. Their clothing choices, their jewelry, their watches will reflect their personality and what they stand for. And be it might be athleisure, but someone could wear. I have a friend who has these beautiful diamond Piaget watches, and she says, I don't have to wear them when I go out to a wedding. I wear it to the supermarket, or I wear it with my jeans if I'm driving my daughter to school. I'm wearing it for my pleasure. I can't tell you how little I hear that. All the old divas talk like that. We don't need a logo. We can put our hand into something. We know if it's great quality. I think the world needs to go back to that level of discrimination. And
But do you think
of doing things for
the average
yourself.
ticket value will come down?
I think in the immediate aftermath, there'll be nervousness and things will come down. I think it might come down because you're not doing so much work. But let's put it this way, that if you're going to wear finer things, then by the next collections, you're going to be seeing things that are not so over the top, but they might even be more expensive for the equivalent product now, but it's much finer. I don't think with the rich and luxury, it's about ticket price. It's about what's appropriate and what they want.
Right. Okay. In terms of...
and sorry, one last thing,
yeah.
which I think is part of the problem in India, is people pay more for an identifiable style. So if the Chanel Double C, or they can tell, you know, a Bulgari design, or they can tell, let's say, you know, one of the other famous jewelers, they feel more comfortable paying more. Now, if a lot of Indian site holders and jewelers have been fantastic what they do, but they're basically replicating designs, then it has no value. I mean, you know, basically then, you know, you're a replicator. So then they'll pay you for the value of the stones and the making charge and the thing. But if I walk into, you know, Viren Bhagat, then I can't ask what the value of stones is because I'm buying the exquisite design that he does. And, you know, I've seen his work from the time there were stainless steel rings with little coins, which was when, you know, he was more affordable, to the exquisite things, but you're in love with it and you will pay for it, whatever you have to get it, if you can. So I think we need to have more original design out of India. If we're talking about India, to put all this great workmanship to not being factories. That's a big business. Be the factory, cut the stones, export what you can, you know, mass manufacture. I know that a lot of jewelers here make things for the top jewelers abroad. It's wonderful. But that premium will go to them because it's their risk, their design.
Right.
When you want to develop that signature, that fingerprint, it takes a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of sampling. It takes trial and error. It takes failure. Then you develop it. That's what has a premium if people value it.
So can you throw certain light on the branding and marketing? What suggestions can you give for the fine jewelry? Because the way you have fashion designers, you know, which are, you know, all over the world, actually they're famous all over the world. You don't find them so much in jewelry. So there are very few jewelry designers who have their own brand or their own label, and they haven't still gone global. So,
I think a lot of the Italians are global. A lot of the French are.
Sorry, Tarun. Tarun, you have.
Sorry. Yeah. I don't think that's an issue. But they've also been around for hundreds of years. I mean, jewelry is much more. You need the stones. It's a different kind of investment. You know, I can make 10 outfits and show it at Fashion Week. If the press likes me, they can pop me on everything. Or if an actress wears it, it's much easier. The investment, the time, the care is much more with jewelry. But let me tell you, it's a much bigger industry. I'd be surprised if the luxury people are not spending much more on jewelry than on clothing. So I wouldn't feel too sorry for yourself. I mean, I just think it needs to be regrouped. Perhaps now you need to move from just being manufacturer and, for lack of a better word, replicator of somebody else's design into developing a unique language. So when I go to Hyderabad, I'll always go to see Kishan Das, because even though they do jarrah, it has a special, unique feel. And I have my eye on one or two things because I like that style. Or if you look at Raj Mehtani, you know, in Calcutta, and he keeps saying, oh, I like vulgar, big, big, big. Well, that's his style. And, you know, a lot of people, a lot of brides will fly to Calcutta to buy it from him because that's a style that he's known for and made popular, and so on and so forth. I think a lot more people need to do this. I think jewelry is also more difficult to mass produce because it's always not easy to get the identical or similar stone. So by virtue of that, you're limited. First, I make a beautiful gown. If I get an order for 2,000 pieces, I can make it. As long as I
But
get the beads or whatever.
but is there something different that we can do in terms of our branding and marketing? Is any one suggestion that you want to give it to the jewelry industry?
Well, I think, like I was telling you this time when I think Mr. Mehta, Rashmi Mehta brought, I think, a Chopard collection or something of necklaces here.
Yeah.
And so they brought these models with these Harvey Leger dresses, which is how a European woman would wear it typically. There were these skinny bandage dresses, very simple, beautiful, these necklaces. There was a ram showing. It was nice. But I think in the kind of mad, whimsical, almost free way that fashion design puts jewelry and clothing together, there's that certain freedom that's needed, to lop it on, to make it more than just one little piece, because one little piece of jewelry gets lost. It might be how it's worn.
Right.
But, it's got to be shown with more elan, with pizzazz, with styling, not just as a piece of jewelry. So I think, and we've also discussed this, that, if jewelers did collaborations with designers, it may not be a long-term thing, it could be for a season. So the jewelry coordinates with that, where basically the designers work with the jewelers, they create a new look. It's shown together, it's shown dramatically. I think it would work very well. I also think that, so for instance, when I go to that big show that happens in Goregaon, I can't remember what, because I always come there to see some things. There's so much to see that by the time you see 1/3, you're dazed. I mean, there's like sensory overload, right?
True.
So maybe instead of so many small players all trying to be their own things, to consolidate, you see gold of a certain kind in an area, it just has more of an impact. Others, I'm not a seasoned jewelry buyer, but it's exhausting. I can't even process it. So to just organize things, to show a certain kind, then within that you're able to differentiate.
Right.
Everyone's each man for his own here. Somehow we need to have a different consolidation, even in design. Maybe the workshops are used. If anyway you are just being worked, if you are being fabricators for people, then why don't 6 people get together and fabricate for a particular style?
Right.
Then I don't know how they would do it, but I think one has to think creatively. And then you stay small and you're pitted against each other. But I don't think that will work in the long run.
There is a concept of fast fashion. First of all, what is exactly, how do you define what is fast fashion? And can that be replicated in jewelry, in fine jewelry?
Well, I don't know. So I think the equivalent of fast fashion is costume jewelry. I don't think it can be replicated in fine jewelry. I don't think. Because fast means you wear it, you throw it. I mean, someone says, oh, I know that I got this at Zara, I'll wear it 3 times, I don't care. There are people who are silly enough to never repeat things because it's fast fashion. It's not an investment piece, right? So people will buy. So you have all kinds of costume jewelry. You go from the really fine, beautifully made at Chanel, and all the brands do it, to, what I see at Accessorize, which is just like, it looks kind of costly, or it's that cheap, mass-produced. But there are many things in between. I think fast fashion just means you don't have to think. It's not an investment. So I think the virtue of that principle is against jewelry and anything fine with fine metals like this. You can do it
even
with
if it's lightweight jewelry with smaller pieces, then
you can do it, I'm sure, but it's not. No one's going to throw it away. There's going to be some intrinsic value because you're using metals, unless you're using alloys. But then it goes into costume. I'm telling you, costume for me is fast.
Yeah.
They can wear it twice. They don't wear it. It doesn't matter. Even brands like Dior, I remember in the 80s and 90s, they always had huge counters at the airports. It was a licensed product, beautifully made, cubic zirconia jewelry. I mean, Christian had a whole line because he likes Swarovski. The original Mr. Dior likes Swarovski. So they had a whole line and it's sold all over, and people bought it. Costume is a big thing. Today, I was telling you the story when, 20 years back when brides came with their family to do their clothes for the wedding, they'd always bring the jewelry and say, this is the jewelry we're wearing. Now we need to find something to go with this. Because the jewelry was the investment, whether they had bought the set as it was or they had collected the stones and then gone to a jeweler of their choice who set it beautifully for them. Now they'll say, the girls say, no, we want to do the outfit first. We'll find the jewelry. But on Instagram, in the thing, in the big outfit shows more. And there's so much jewel-like embroidery
Right.
that the jewelry itself is getting a bit lost, even though it might be spectacular. And that's
Okay.
why designers who do these very big sets actually stand out. So there's a time up and down. Most people don't understand the difference between fine stones, good stones. You know, it's also so much information out there that people are dazed, you know, unless they come from families that have studied this. So I think because of its size and because of embroidery being what it was and the extravagance of clothing, and also in the West, they'll wear one piece of jewelry. They'll wear very fine jewelry, but it's one. You'll never find somebody unless it's some Arab princess, you know, or
Right.
Shah Banu in the Shah of Iran. That's a different world. It's gone.
Right.
Even, you know, Princess Diana would wear one choker, one earring. I mean, what did she not have access to, right? I mean, the vault of Windsor's jewels. So that's the style. And I think the world is actually becoming a little more westernized in that respect, except
Right.
at the very Indian functions. But then they're happy to be Jodha Akbar and go from there to their jewelry. You know, that's different.
Okay.
But I think even that's changing. So people will buy less, but they'll buy better. I think stackable jewelry so that the pieces, I've always said this, you can wear the three things as one, but you can wear them separately so you
Sure.
get more use. I think people
Right.
are concerned about utility now.
Okay. Coming to the distribution, I know you have been very strong with your distribution, and whether it's your own stores or department stores, or whether it's online or your e-commerce or multi-brand outlets, you've gained a
We
lot
have
of
not been
experience.
strong at all. We've done best with our own stores. We sold through some MBOs and we sold in Europe. But then when the
Okay.
line became much more Indian, it stopped being relevant in Europe. And I realized that as an Indian designer, I understood the needs of my Indian customers more. And it was better to do extravagant, beautiful Indian clothes than do jewel t-shirts, which is what they wanted from me. We will start that up as a separate line now.
Right.
But all I'm trying to say is that now online is very important, but
Sure.
it's obviously price driven. No, I don't see people buying very fine things or the important wedding clothing online unless they're stuck in some place in Africa and they can't, you know.
Right.
Sometimes with, you know, some of the more conservative Muslim families, they don't want their daughters to travel alone. So they will shop online, you know, they buy very beautiful things. So it depends. Now people are going to have to go even more online because say no one's going to be Europe shut its borders. So bride sitting in France or in the UK might have to shop online unless she has a local retailer who can help her there. Likewise
Sure.
with the United States. It's changing and people have less and less time and now there's going to be less travel. So online will develop. There are different ways you have to engage with people in the same way now. Everyone's getting so used to virtual reality that you
Hmm.
can sit and explain something just the way you would in a
Yeah.
store. But you know, there's something to be said for touch and feel. And the dazzle of a beautiful diamond necklace will never be captured by a camera. I mean, it's just
Right.
different when you hold it and you see it in the light, you know.
Sure.
And thank God that some things can't be taken away by technology because they could also be misused.
Yeah.
And I feel that some things have to be kept. But you know, people, you know, a lot of jewelers I know here will go do a big round in, say, the United States and Europe every summer, and they have a fantastic big private clientele who they meet. It's different ways people have to do promotions with stores, collaborations, whatever it takes.
But is multi-brand outlet likely a reality because a lot of jewelers are interested in keeping jewelry and fashion designer clothing and apparel.
Well,
So
I think it works very well, especially if the fashion that's being sold is
yeah.
something that you can sell jewelry with. So if we have jewelry, you know, we keep one small Delhi jewelers whose stuff we design, sometimes over a few designs in the store, and it sells decently well. Because somebody will try something, so would you like to try a necklace that goes with it? Or do you have anything that I could try on? I'm like, it's designed, it looks great together, you know. Or sometimes they'll call from a jeweler, the bags of jewels will come to the store for them to try the jewelry on that they're considering with the outfits that are being ordered. So even that's very important. So it's a very good thing to do because
Right.
there's a great synergy, especially if you show them together on the ramp, you shoot it together, and you present it cohesively as a style. I think people are very interested in that because people are so busy that very often, as particularly young girls, don't have the time to have developed their style in this particular area because they want simpler things. You know, now suddenly they have to dress up, so they're always looking for guidance. You know, they're
But
grateful
is
for
there any
hegemony.
international body that can actually tie up with the, all the jewelers internationally with the fashion? Is there a possibility?
Well, you see, jewelry stores are usually done separately. So it's only a fantastic department store like a Harrods or a Harvey Nicks or, wherever, whether it's in the Middle East or in London, they would do it. But now everyone says it's the end of the department store for now. So we have to see. Right now, everything's in flux.
Right.
Normally, in fashion stores, in fine jewelry stores, there's much tighter security. It needs to be because the value of each thing is much, is much more. But like
Right.
say in India, if people came and did exhibitions with jewelers, at fashion stores, at the big stores, where there was a fit, I think it would go well. Or just sourced and kept things as well. I
Hmm.
think that's the way to do it. But the really fine top end stuff, people are still going to go to Cartier to buy it. They don't want to buy it from someone else. They will
Okay.
buy the really precious, special things from the source and be reassured by them that what they're buying is of a certain quality. I
Okay.
think. I mean, I could be wrong, but it's my
Great.
view.
Let me take a few questions from the attendees. Uh, okay. This is from Anushka Prakash. She wants to know how you describe modern women with fashion and jewelry, and what will be the predicted effect of COVID-19 over modern women trend.
Well, you know, I think most modern women that I see today are much more toned down in their jewelry. They want very beautiful quality things, but they're not defining themselves by the amount of jewelry they wear, or just they're not here to be just glamorous. Most of them are very well educated now. They're
Right.
working in very serious positions, whether it's their own businesses, whether it's their family businesses, from finance to you name it. I mean, there is no field that they're not in, right? And so there's a more practical approach. They'll wear a beautiful ring, they'll wear beautiful tops. But even my friends who are literally billionaires are very understated. They'll wear a sari to work because they want to be professional. They don't want to be distracting people.
Right.
When they go out at night, because they're such professionals, they also tend now over time to be toned down compared to women who sit at home and still go to lunch and are glamorous. Well, they have more time to think about what they'll wear and dress up and make the statement. A lot of these working women don't have that time or are now preoccupied with other things. It's a process of evolution, you know. But when they do buy something, they'll buy something fantastic, you know. They won't think twice, whether it's a jewel watch or a necklace that they'll buy or when a jeweler is saying, but they wear it in a more sparing way. I've noticed this as evolution, but there's also so many more of them. So it's not like the market has shrunk. Where there were 100, there are 2,000 of these women. You know, that's the way to look at it. And there
Okay.
are different people at different stages of evolution. I'm finding with the younger generation, the millennials who all studied abroad and come back, you know, my closest friends, my goddaughters, they're very they're very anti-flash. They're very
Okay.
smart. They do not want to stand out because they're shimmering. That's just not an option.
Right.
They'll wear one nice thing. They like quality, but they're not out to prove anything to anybody. So there's a big difference. As they're educated and secure, they do things for themselves, and that's actually a very nice, more sustainable way in the end. But having said that, in India, you can never generalize. There are all kinds. There are girls who sit at home and shop. There's all different kinds. We're too big and we're too diverse to generalize.
Okay. There's somebody who wants to know if you have your own website because she couldn't locate one.
Yes, we do have our own website. It's actually being redone. We're better on Instagram at the moment. The handle is Tarun Chahlani, but we will be upgraded. The website and all is being upgraded and will be put on. So we have a Facebook page. We have Instagram is the way to go and look at our things, and that connects to a web store.
Right. The next question is more from the bridal perspective. And since both you specialize on the bridal side of clothing line, and people want to buy a lot of jewelry, what impact this post-pandemic era is going to have on the bridal segment? Is there anything particular that you see?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we touched upon this in an earlier answer,
Yeah.
that I think that people are not going to get married. Of course, they're going to get married. Life has to go on. But what you can't have anymore, till there's a cure or a vaccine, is you can't have very big gatherings. You can't, I mean, I'd say 50 is a big gathering. If you're going to be responsible towards social distancing and whatever norms come up, which are really to protect us as a society. Because
Right.
when you have big things, when you're having a big thing, you have to worry about the caterers. You can't keep track of everybody. Where is people coming from outside? Where are the florists coming? Because it appears to be so contagious that if you're exposed to the wrong thing, no matter how strong you are, you could
Sure.
easily, get it. And that would not be nice. And nobody would want to be responsible. Yeah, you've come to my wedding and 30 people fell sick, That sometimes happens with food poisoning, and that's traumatic enough. So anyway,
Absolutely.
so I think people will do things. They will not have 5 functions. They will have less, because with the same 50 people, you can't have 5 different functions. Or you
Sure.
will do small groups of very special, very fine dinners. So if you won't really have to do 300 people, you might break it up into 4 or 5 days. And that's also very intimate. People will wear very beautiful things because they're not spending on all that shosha. So they're going to buy much more beautiful jewelry. They're going to buy much more beautiful clothing, because like we're doing this on Zoom, they will be making photographs and albums, or people will even be attending certain things
Okay.
that are meaningful people to, or dropping in and out for the event when it's going on, except they're going to have to do it digitally. Uh, so the gifts might get more special. Uh, the engagement will change, but it's not as if we're going to stop living, and it's not as if this is going to be less special, and it's not as if people are not going to have these memories and photographs up around their house for their grandchildren to see. So that emotional connect has not gone anywhere. It's just for a period of time. We have to do it differently, and then it might go back. I hope it doesn't go back to this totally mad, excessive, because it had ceased to be fun. It was just too much
Right.
sensory overload, and it was not chic. It was just mad, I mean, just too much. But
Right.
each to his own. So I think that's the norm for now. 8, 9, 10 months. I told my son,
But
if you want to get married, you must get married soon.
chic.
That would be wonderful, huh?
No, so it will get lighter and chic and more
It might not be lighter, it'll be finer. They won't be
finer.
under pressure, because you see, a lot of the time I hear people say, we are very nervous about being the family of the bride and groom. They don't want to be they would want to be underdressed compared to guests. I mean,
Yeah.
frankly, I couldn't care less if I was. And I don't think my wife would care less either. I mean, we're not going to dress up because we think 5 people are over the top. However,
Right.
it seems to bother people. Now
Yeah.
I think that whole pressure will be off, and people will dress in finer things, because I'm going to sit and see you across a dinner table with 30 other people. It's
Sure.
different. It's like in the Western world, I mean, 200 is a big number, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's going to go to that. We will not even be allowed to do 200 people. We saw
Right.
what happened at that wedding last week, Devi Gowda's son, and it was on the national news and all this drama. So
Yeah.
I mean, also, if people are going to wear masks, then maybe necklaces need to be worn on their head and not. I mean, imagine wearing a mask and a big necklace underneath.
Yeah.
Much better here. So we're going to have to think of things where people can do this, but in an elegant, discreet way.
Okay.
I don't know. A lot of challenges.
One very interesting question, which says that one of the trends predicted for after the pandemic in the luxury market is that consumers would become more conscious of the products that they are buying, opting for sustainable and more environmental friendly products and ethical
Absolutely.
products.
So things that are ethical, things that are handmade, things that are not destroying the world, that don't
Mhm.
have a big effluent, discharge or side. I think I think everyone's got a shock. And let me tell you, everyone's life, unless you're running hospitals or you're making protective gear
Right.
or pharmaceuticals, which anyway you're at one level supposed to be in the service of humanity. And a lot of those companies are, I will say this, like
Sure.
Simpla. But I think that people are conscious, because we realize everyone's life is going to go for a toss. We're seeing starvation. We don't know how bad. I don't think it's a depression. I don't think it's a recession. It's a depression. If
Right.
America's the United States unemployment is up to 29 million people and climbing. Can you imagine what countries like India will have? I mean, we can't even imagine.
True.
France gets 83 million tourists. There are going to be no tourists this year. Where are those jobs going? So we've understood we might become a little more, homegrown, and small is beautiful. Everything will contract, and we're going to make conscious choices so that we don't put ourselves into this position anytime soon.
So are you doing something about the sustainability factor in fashion?
You see, our stuff is mostly handmade and very artisanal. So honestly, there's not much more I can or need to do. All our centers all over India are doing hand embroidered stuff. We're not a big company, we fashion companies. The flip side of this is we get a lot of, trumpets blaring, but we're small little, artisanal companies. We do use some, blended fabrics because they have qualities that, we can't get in pure silk. So in some lines, we sometimes use, even if you're using a blend, it's normally a bamboo or a viscose. We don't really use that much polyester, except in one fabric that needs a heat pressing like isemiyake. So we're pretty sustainable, and what we're doing is we've always done quality. And people who buy my clothes say, listen, we take the clothes out after 20 years and we wear them because the fashion is timeless and the quality is so good, it looks good. To me, that's very sustainable. That's what we need to do more. You need to buy things and use them over a life. When you buy that quality, automatically a lot of this junk will fall off the planet.
Okay.
At whatever level you are, obviously.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting question.
I think we need a bit of a change in a value system as a society, and magazines and stars borrowing things even to walk through the airport, which gives the fake impression that they have thousands of things. All this fake value system has to go.
Okay. Another interesting question, and especially interesting from your perspective, because you have been in the fashion designing and you have also been in jewelry designing. So the question is, which is more difficult to design and challenging? Is it clothes or jewelry?
Well, actually, there's many more shapes and details you can do in clothes, and many more textiles and textures you use. And I've done it for much longer, so I understand it better. Yeah. We had a very hard time when we started doing things in jewelry with the World Gold Council or the Silver Project. We did something. So then we decided to make our samples by embroidering them. So even if something went off to a little workshop in Rajkot or Junagadh, they could look at the 3D. I'm sure now with 3D printers, it's much easier. I think to be a great jewelry designer, you need to start from the source, which we weren't doing. Draw everything, or in terms of really great jewelry designers, they even cut their stones to the shapes they want. And that's what creates final unique shapes.
Right.
I think that all great design, it's not what's easy or not. I'm sure if I look at, say, what a Viren or some of the jewelers I like abroad do, that's not easy. Each has its own, I've just done clothes so much longer. And so they're different canvases, but they're both wonderful to work with.
Okay. One interesting aspect is about, how important is storytelling in jewelry, and how should jewelry industry adapt to this change?
Well, that's a very good question, whoever asked it. Yeah. Because people are looking for a new meaning to the way they buy, to what they buy, to where it's coming from. So, like the whole story, ironically, I was watching parts of Blood Diamond today and saying, what a great difference it's made from that whole Blood Diamond thing to now what they say where, De Beers will have forever marks so that they're marking piece of diamond. So you have a certificate to say that it's been ethically mined, blah, blah, blah. Say from 20 years back, right? So basically, Rahul, I find that this is what storytelling does. Storytelling is not to be fluffy and make up some silly story. Good storytelling is always authentic. It's from the heart, and you might need to take certain mundane facts and not dress them up, but to present them in a more interesting way. But I think more than ever before, in all this noise, and with a customer that's seeking to it, the storytelling of what you're doing, why you're doing it, what drives it, the story of the product, maybe the artisans working on it, where the stones, whatever it is, without making it boring and giving too much information. You can
Sure.
also go, you de-glamorize it. We don't need to, de-gut it, but to find that sweet spot. And I think people are always interested in that, and more so now after all this reflection. I think that's very important.
Right.
Now, for
Absolutely.
jewelry, I was once at, I think I might have told you this, I was having dinner with East Cassel, who was the head of, Louis Vuitton. They were launching, which had gone for their fine bijou collection. And the gentleman who was designing it was there at dinner, and he was explaining that they'd looked at the constellations and stars. It was very interesting because if I just looked at the piece on my own, may not have made sense to me. But I looked at it with a different eye. Not that I was the customer for it. With
Sure.
Chanel, they're always telling the story. With my friend Virena, I always say it's the modern Mughal because it's so, some of those shapes, I feel like you've seen them in the Mughal, but you've never seen them like this with the finely cut stones and the graded basra. So everyone has their story. And,
Mhm.
and I think if you can tell it, provided you have a story, then that's wonderful.
Okay. One more interesting question is, like in apparel, you keep trying with different materials, whether it's cotton or nylon or leather or so in jewelry, do you think there is any other metal we should try and it will work other than gold?
I think the thing with jewelry today is that, fine jewelry was developed for a small group of people who were very wealthy or who were aristocracy or could afford a lifestyle that could only be dreamed of by the mass of humanity, right?
Hmm.
But everybody wore clothes. Even if they were poor, they had to wear clothes and shoes and boots and this and that. Now, everyone's everyone's moved up the clothing thing. The people who have jewelry have fantastic collections of jewelry. There's been, decades of prosperity. I mean, some of my clients in India, their jewelry collections are just spectacular for length, breadth, scale, quality, size of stones, graded tassels done in bus. I mean, you just name it. Exquisite.
Hmm.
Uh, but I think that, the thing is that it's got to have novel. So for a long time, colored diamonds was the thing, Suddenly,
Yeah.
between us, so pink diamond, champagne, yellow, blah, blah, blah. And they got their big surges. I mean, we've also reached the point of maxing out. What is this new material? These people are not interested in wearing wood. The Italians will wear the strangest combinations of metals twisted because they really love sculpture and they've gone past that renaissance. I mean, they're really evolved in design.
Sure.
But it takes an evolution of mind for people to appreciate this. I don't think most Indians have reached that yet. They're still satiating the first wave of jewelry. Um, I think there are some things that are very possible to do. I think that the marriage, what Chanel did, and I think people should think about.
Right.
Chanel was the first designer at a time it was inconceivable, and that's what made her so modern. She mixed costume with real. She worked with
Right.
Vidura. She did the beautiful cuffs. She did the crosses, but she mixed, whatever she wanted with it. She was, and she was, she didn't care. She did it with insouciance. She just did it. She was not differential to the process. That real is with real and costume is with costume. She mixed it up, and that's what. And most people do that today. So maybe if you really want to expand, I mean, there might be certain things that one can't get, in quantities, or if we get the stones, they're so expensive. So find a way to mix. I think the way forward might be to mix costume and real. So women wore real furs. Now, when real furs became unfashionable because of the way, animals were treated or farmed, today you get beautiful faux fur, and they pay a fortune for faux fur. There are many people who buy faux leather because they don't want to hurt animals, and they're buying it very well. So why is that not possible with jewelry? If there's a brand that backs it and makes it something cool and beautiful,
Sure.
you know, you can't say never. There's always got to be a way where someone has the guts to try something or falls into it inadvertently, or for whatever reason does it, and voila, then you've got a new idea going, and maybe it catches on.
Okay.
I don't
Oh,
have the answer. I don't work in the jewelry space.
that's true.
Maybe you need to just disregard all the advice I've given you, Prasad.
No, in fact,
You might be safer off. You might be safer off doing that.
no, no, in fact, it's always good to hear another perspective, because otherwise we in jewelry industry tend to work with blinkers on. So, it's always good to, and that's why I was very keen to have this chat, just to get a little insights into it. One last question, which is, again, very interesting, is jewelry, especially fine jewelry, is always, seen as an investment, and in fact sold as a part of the heirloom or as an investment. Can it ever be sold as a fashion accessory?
Well, I think if it's an investment, plus it's beautiful, it is a fashion accessory. It's something you adorn yourself with, okay?
Sure.
So if you buy something that's really beautiful, as opposed to someone saying, no, you buy this design, I made a copy of a graph, and it's 500 carats, and it's a good investment, buy it. She doesn't like it. But if she finds something that's really beautiful, but also in those same qualities of stones, and she knows she will love it forever.
Right.
Like some of the jewelers I mentioned, you have to fall in love with it. Don't take away that emotional connect, because it's an investment, sure. But what does it mean if you don't love it? I mean, the person who's buying that probably has hundreds of other necklaces or will have many more, whatever. It's what you love and you bond with, and that moves you, that will take you back again and again and again for more.
Right.
It's things like this have to be a love affair.
Okay.
I think we're learning that in India, because we, were probably decimated and socialist, even though Indians love luxury so much. But we grew up in a very socialist, kind of ugly environment where we were hankering even for basic product. I mean, to get a pair of Levi's was like a major deal, when we were kids. I mean, you were all looking over the wall, to what you could get from abroad. I think once that everyone's belly is full, then you start looking at, like the French and the Italians do, the romance and the story of what is being created, where it comes from, and what's the source and how you do it. And that needs a stillness to appreciate.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Tarun. I mean, what I have gathered from all this chat is there are a few things that perhaps fashion is doing differently. One is definitely doing the branding and marketing and going global. Globalization
Storytelling,
is something which is interesting. The second is the fast fashion, which is, again, I mean, maybe silver jewelries should be the next thing to get into the fast fashion, because silver is still seen as the precious metal.
Yeah.
So maybe that can be one of the answers.
And mixed with pearls, mixed with semi-precious stones. Beautiful.
Sure. The third I could gather was, I think, the multi-brand outlet in terms of the distribution could be one more new area which both fashion and jewelry can come together and can look into it. And I think these are the 3-4 different, and I think online marketing is going to be, I mean, though it's finally going to be difficult in the sense that touch and feel will be missing. But nonetheless, because of post-COVID, the chances are that
you start by you get attention by online. Then people will make their way. We'll have to find new things. So we said when the stores open in Bombay, we were having a discussion with the stores today, that if women are not comfortable coming into the stores, or men, then they can identify what they want, and somebody will go to the residence with the clothes.
Right.
Till such time as things settle down. You've got to think of solutions, Net-a-Porter started as a online retailer, but now they say in 1.5 hours in London, not at this time of the lockdown, of course, if you make a selection, within 1.5 hours, they come to your office or house and you can try on the clothes. So solutions are needed.
Solutions are needed, yes. So you
good talking to you again.
Sorry?
I said good talking to you, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you so much, Tarun. Right.
Thank you.
Right.
Bye-bye.